Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the April 4, 2024 meeting of the Southborough Select Board. And this is a special meeting for us to hold interviews of the three finalists for our fire chief position. And before we bring in the first candidate, Brian Harrington, just wanted to introduce Bernie Lynch from Community Paradigm. We'd like to say a few brief remarks about the process that brought us here today.
Sure, great. Thank you very much for engaging us again with this hiring process of a fire chief. These are challenging positions to fill. Almost every position in municipal government, as we all know nowadays, is very challenging. But we're pleased with the results that we had in bringing candidates to the town. When you engaged with us a couple months back, we went through pretty much our standard process of trying to get an understanding of what the town was looking for in filling this position, what the challenges and opportunities were that Southborough has with regards to fire services. With that, we were able to develop a comprehensive position statement that we used to market the position. And so we went out and we advertised the position in the places you would normally expect to see this advertised: the Municipal Association, the the Mass Fire Chiefs Association. We did limit ourselves primarily to Massachusetts, but that effort does extend outside of the state. We did have a number of candidates come from outside of Massachusetts that we looked at as well. And then in addition to those normal posting, we utilized our network to spread the word, to do the outreach, certainly including candidates that we've run across in other searches that we felt were suitable for this position, that may not have been suitable from their perspective or the other community's perspectives. And we were able to bring a total of 15 candidates to the town. In working with the town, we were able to narrow that down to 7 individuals that were brought in for 30 to 45-minute interviews that we ran through and got a good handle on what they could bring to this position, the skills that they had, and how effective they could be here with your department, where your department is at this particular point in time. And from that, we were able to narrow the field down further to about 5 people, I think, that we wanted to move into the assessment center. I think the entire board is familiar with the assessment center process and has seen that in action before, and saw some of what we did here. It gives a good feel for scenario-based process of how the candidates would deal with issues that were put before them if they were to be appointed fire chiefs. In the end, we only had 3 candidates that moved forward from the 5. We had 2 withdraw for a variety of reasons, mostly having to do with decisions to stay where they were or family considerations that took them out of it. But from those 3, the reaction of the assessment team that we had, we utilized former fire chiefs that are very familiar with the current former fire chiefs that are familiar with the tasks of being a fire chief and running a fire service, emergency medical services. And they were very pleased with the results. Felt that each one brought something a little bit different in terms of skill set that they would bring to the job. And they all come from a little bit different background in terms of where they are in their careers. So you have 3 very qualified, good candidates that you'll be interviewing tonight. Again, they have different levels of experience and where they are with their career. But we think that all 3 of them can do the job, and look forward to having you go through the process, ask your questions, and then following that, my understanding is you're going to be meeting next Monday, I believe, to make your decision. I always stress that you have my phone number, you have my email, and I can put you in touch with the Jack Perro, who ran the assessment center. He's our partner in these processes, and we can talk through any issues that you might have that come out of the interviews that you have. you have questions over the weekend as you consider this, your selection. That's where we are. The candidates are all listed here. They're done alphabetically, so everyone's clear on who got first, second, and who got third. The first candidate is Brian Harrington, who is a deputy chief in the town of Hudson. Lauren McDonald, Larry is the current fire chief in Oxford. Andrew Contini is a fire captain on the town of Foxborough. Got the first candidate in. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
I think we're ready.
All right. So right there. Who's Brian Harrington?
How we doing? So, good evening. So the format we're going to follow here is we have a list of 15 questions.
Okay.
And we have allotted about an hour for each candidate. So in order to stay kind of roughly on time, we're going to try to have each question and answer module stay to about 4 minutes.
Okay.
So I ask you that you please try to answer the questions as asked to you, and then so we can kind of stick to the time. And then after we're done asking all of the questions that we're going to ask each candidate, before we bring in the next candidate, we'll just ask if anyone has any follow-up questions. Okay, so I'll begin. Please tell us about your fire service career, why you entered the field, why you are interested in this position, and why you believe you would be successful here. Illustrate why you chose Southborough in particular compared to the other similar career opportunities.
So I started in the fire service in 2002, 1 week after graduating college, jumped right in. I was lucky enough to get a job. I did 12 years as a firefighter in Hudson, promoted to lieutenant, did 8 years as a lieutenant, and the last 2 as deputy chief. I just think that I'm ready for taking on a new role as a fire chief, being a leader of a department. Throughout my career, I worked my side job at the firefighting academy down in Stowe. So I did that since 2004. So even on the side, I was firefighting. I just have a passion for it. Funny enough, I went to college initially to be as an accounting major, and realized I didn't want to sit behind a desk, and that's kind of an adrenaline junkie, so kind of turned past and went that route, and 20 years later now I'm back to looking at getting behind a desk. So
no adrenaline in accounting. We have an account here.
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of my career path in firefighting.
Okay.
As far as the town of Southborough, it's a great community. It's similar to Hudson and like its history to me, a little smaller in population, but reminds me of a little bit of the Hudson that I kind of grew up in before we started kind of getting really big over there. And I like the small town feel of it and the history of it. So yeah.
All right, thank you.
So thank you, Brian, for applying for the job. And if you ever decide you want to change careers, we need a call.
All right, I'll take that.
We need a counselor. Okay, describe your leadership style and how you would interact with members of the department. As a leader, specifically demonstrate how you make sure everyone in the organization knows what is expected. I'm looking for specific examples, just for examples of how you make sure that everyone knows what is expected of them.
Yeah, so I think, my leadership style is servant leadership, and I know that's a hot topic buzzword in the fire service and all that, but it really is to the town, and to the firefighters. As far as expectations, I think you just gotta be upfront right from the beginning, set the expectations. So that everybody's, on the same page. And, the other part of your question, I think, is just, setting the culture, and I know, you can't just walk in and expect, get the respect of the firefighters. That has to be earned over time. So I get that. It's just developing a culture within the department. So I like the fire department that I envision is, super professional in the community. But firehouse is, laid back and fun, bust chops and all that behind the scenes. So that's the fire department I envision.
Two parts to this question, really. One is, how do you create an atmosphere of respect and collaboration within the department? What do you do, particularly off the starting line here? Second, what's your strategy for managing interdepartmental conflict?
Yeah, so again, that first part is gonna take some time, and it's just, I don't know, I've always been a lead from the front kind of person, just be willing to, I never ask anybody to do anything I'm not willing to do. You know what I mean? So I like to get my hands dirty. So again, that's gonna take time. I just have to kind of show that I'm willing to do that. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
What's your strategy for managing interdepartmental conflict?
So
Police and fire.
interdepartmental meeting within the town, so police, fire, DPW, and all that. So I'm big on building relationships. That's one thing I've done in Hudson in my career is I've got really good relationships with my police department, my building department, my schools, the council on aging. So I run the SAFE program over there. So since 2006, actually, the senior SAFE. So developed really good relationships with the school and the council on aging. Yeah, it's all relationship driven in my mind. Thank you.
A major challenge of most fire departments is employee recruitment and retention.
Yes.
What experience do you have with this, and what ideas would you bring to confronting this issue? And beyond traditional advertising portals, what creative ideas do you have for outreach? That's like 3 things.
Yeah.
I would be glad to refresh you at any point.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with it. I think the biggest thing, and I've always thought, like, you have to create a culture where people don't want to leave. So I think retention is the bigger issue, right? So if you have, I like to say, like, train people so they're good enough to work anywhere, and create a department that's good enough, that's so good they don't want to leave. You know what I mean? So recruitment is tough everywhere right now. I get that. The strategies besides the obvious, wages and benefits, is kind of the obvious one. But other than that, it's, I guess, education, getting out there to young people and just kind of educating them on what we do and, how cool of a job it is. And then once again, like I said, retention is the big thing. That's where, you invest in somebody, and then to lose them, that's more devastating than not getting them in the first place. So
What specific experience do you have with this, and what ideas could you bring to it?
as far as recruitment within the fire department, not much. So I come from civil service department where there's a list and we just pluck them right from there. But again, I was down the firefighting academy for a number of years. I became an assistant coordinator down there and was in charge of hiring for the support division down there. So I had 100 people under me, and was sort of instrumental in interviewing a lot of people down there for that. So that's kind of my experience in that. I don't know necessarily that it's recruitment, but it was sort of selling our department to them once we got them in the door. So I don't know if that satisfies your answer, but.
And beyond traditional advertising portals, what creative ideas do you have for outreach?
Again, I just think it's education and community outreach, getting to the schools, getting to the classes, the EMT classes, getting to the younger people and just really kind of showing them what we do, and that's a cool career to look into.
Okay, thank you.
So our department is getting newer firefighters with less experience that will need mentoring. And how do you develop a culture that acknowledges this without excluding the more experienced members of the department?
I think you put it on the more experienced department members. So I think you have to build a line of succession, that it should come from the top, but trickle down through the senior members. They should take the younger members under their wing and mold them. So that's kind of how I would handle that. As far as young people coming on with no experience, that's how it happens. Like I said, I started with zero experience. I didn't know anything about the fire service. You jump right in, you join the crews, and you learn on the fly. There's plenty of classes and schools out there now for young firefighters, but best way to learn is to do it.
Okay, I think I have the next question. Please describe your current fire department in terms of services, staffing, organization, and specialized characteristics. And based upon your research of the Southborough Department, what are the similarities between your current fire department and what are the differences?
So in Hudson, we have a fire chief, a deputy fire chief. We used to have 2 deputy fire chiefs. We just lost one. And then we have 4 shifts of 8. Those shifts consist of 2 lieutenants and 6 firefighters, and that's split up over 2 stations. So one station has a lieutenant and 5. The other station has a lieutenant and 2. We run 2 engines out of each of those houses, and then the headquarters has a tower truck or a rescue that we kind of cross man at the moment. That 8-man shift drops down to 7. That's the minimum. So as far as specialty positions there, like I said, I'm involved with the safe department, the safe program there. We have members that are on the state hazmat team, which I'm one of. I have been since 2011. I'm a member of the tech rescue team within the district. And I've been since 2013, and also with the fire investigation team in the district. And that's, I believe, since 2016. But we have members that are also on the dive team. And as far as comparing Southborough to Hudson, I realize here in Southborough you have a 5-man department, I believe, where it's captain and lieutenant. The biggest difference I see right now is that in Hudson we don't run an ambulance. We have a private third-party ambulance, Patriot Ambulance, and here you guys do run an ambulance ALS services. So that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, I think. That being said, I did work for a private ambulance company for a number of years when I first got on, so I'm familiar with the EMS world, obviously. But that's going to be one of the bigger challenges. One thing I really, from what I've seen online, seems like you've got some key people in positions to help out with some of that stuff. So like an EMS coordinator or an ALS coordinator, a training coordinator. So that's really good to see. That's something that we're in Hudson, we're actually trying to implement. So that was one thing that I noticed that could be very helpful in those areas.
All right, thank you.
So just to follow on what you just said.
Yeah.
Hudson is now trying to implement a public ambulance service like ours?
No, sorry. We're trying to implement some of those positions like the coordinators. So like a training coordinator and an EMS coordinator and sort of those positions. So again, that goes back to your question before about how you get some of the senior leadership involved in some of this stuff. And I think one way to do that is to kind of bring them into some of those positions and help with decision making in those areas. As far as the ambulance in Hudson, we've been talking about doing that since I got on 22 years ago and
Talking to bring it back, bring it into the.
bringing it with internally and it's just never happened for whatever reason.
Interesting. Okay, so to kind of change to something that is also interesting. Southborough is considering joining a regional emergency communication center, REC, right? As many other towns in the state are, as the state is trying to encourage towns to do. We've been thinking this for about 2 years. Our previous chief kind of led the effort. He was concerned about lack of a robust dispatch operation here.
Yep.
And felt like we had to do something, and this would be one thing we could do. Hudson was actually part of the original group and dropped out. That's why you dropped out.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you joined today, how would you be able to help this select board in coming to a good, well thought out decision as far as whether to join a rec or to stay local and maybe add more to what we can do here?
So I would be in favor of it, and mainly because it's coming.
Hold on, I don't want to know if you're in favor or not.
Okay.
But how would you help us? So that we would want to know if you're in favor, right? But how would you help us make a really good solid decision? It's a very controversial topic, let me tell you that, in this town. There's a lot of people that want to keep it the way it is. But how would you help us get to a really good, well thought out decision?
Well, I think so. I think your hand's going to be forced eventually, anyways, and I think that's where
What does that mean?
I
Are we gonna
think-
have to do it?
I think the state is going to mandate it down the road. So I think the best avenue is to get out in front of it and if you can create your own path forward is much better than being forced into your path forward. So that would be my recommendation. I would speak with area chiefs. I know those conversations are being had as we speak. I may have been involved in one this morning, to be honest with you. So I think that's the way that the state wants it to go eventually, and it's gonna happen whether you like it or not.
So don't say anything you're supposed to, but is Hudson reconsidering is what you're saying?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Southborough responds to incidents on several major highways on which there can be motor vehicle accidents, and, for example, creating hazmat situations. We've got 4 major academic institutions in town. The question is, what experience do you have in responding to managing larger public safety incidents?
So again, as to your first one, again, being a member of the state hazmat team, I've responded to a number of large incidents on highways. We have couple highways in Hudson ourselves, but I responded to a number in the district. So I do have some familiarity with that. I think you just have to maintain a strong incident command system up there. Works well with your police departments, your DPW, and other departments when it comes to that. As far as what was it,
Major incidents, involving maybe schools, hazmat,
Yes.
big issues.
Yep, again, so it's really relationship driven. I would want to build strong relationships with the people that are in charge of the schools and all that. Through my dealings with the fire academy, I know a lot of the players down there that are involved. If it were to come to major incidents, whether it's getting assistance from the Department of Fire Services with rehab units or communications units, stuff like that. So large scale incidents, I would be comfortable with running.
Do you have those in Hudson reasonably frequently?
What's that?
Major incidents? Many communities.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like mutual aid, yeah, we have our share. We have very strong mutual aid relationships, both receiving mutual aid and giving mutual aid. So I think that's huge, especially for a department like Southborough with the size of it. You're really gonna have to rely on your mutual aid and your district teams. Can I just follow up on that? So when you're talking about schools, I know obviously the big thing is Asher training or AIR, the active shooter type training. So I'm actually in the process of getting our entire department through the active shooter training in coordination with our police department. So that's another big issue now that when you're discussing schools. Fortunately.
Here we are.
This is sort of an accounting question.
Great.
Okay. What level of involvement have you had in budget creation and budget management? What do you consider the most challenging part of budget?
So I was involved in our last budgeting cycle in Hudson. Obviously, so most fire departments are 90 to 95% personnel. And the biggest issue is managing your overtime, I would say. And again, that's, you're bound by the collective bargaining agreement and but that's kind of your biggest issue. And then it's your big ticket items, which, I'm sure, Southborough's got this nice new facility. You got a new ladder truck coming, is that right?
Yes.
So, it sounds like you got some of the big ticket items checked off already, so it's managing the fleet at this point and the facilities. Kind of long term, I think that's something that gets overlooked in a lot of departments. And then it's just managing the overtime.
So would you say that overtime in Hudson is being appropriately managed right now, or is it, how do you deal with that?
Yes, we recently have increased the overtime budget to increase our minimum manning. So that we could respond to the incidents that we're dealing with appropriately. And so it took some time, but we were able to build that up over the years. A lot of that is earmarked for training, which is super important. So
You said you had 8.
8 on a full shift, 7 on a minimum right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have experience writing and obtaining grants? And what resources have you been able to provide in this area through grant funding? And can you tell us about how you've been able to execute a grant, but also manage that project successfully?
Yep. So when I first got on, just out of college, my chief kind of leaned on me to help write a grant then. So I helped write a grant for SCBA's back in, I think it was 04 or 06, something like that. But we were awarded that. It was $250,000 for new SCBA's for the whole department. And then because of my success in assisting with that, I kind of became our grant writer in the department. They sent me to a few grant writing classes here and there. But I then wrote a grant for, I forget, it's in my resume, but I wrote a grant for some RIT training a few years later. I think it was $30,000 to get the whole department through some RIT training. I helped write a grant for gear a number of years later. And then there was a 4th grant that I wrote in there that I was awarded. Then through leadership changes, we had a chief come in who wanted to take that over himself. So I kind of wasn't writing grants for a few years there. My current chief now has brought me back into that. So I actually just finished a grant we just received for new vehicle extrication equipment, airbags, $20,000 that we're getting. We just were approved for that, so that's coming now. I just finished a grant, an AFG grant, which is Assistance to Firefighters Grant. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But we just submitted that for $50,000 for all new hose and nozzles. Some of our hose on the trucks in Hudson were 40 years old which is crazy. That's so if we get this grant, that'll replace all of our hose on all of our pieces. Yeah, so I'm very familiar with the grant process. I enjoy writing them, which sounds crazy, but
Okay.
real quick too, sorry, I was involved in writing a SAFER grant a few years ago too, which is to increase manpower. We were not awarded that grant. It's a highly competitive grant. Yeah.
All right. So the next question we have, I'll ask it, but I think you might have already answered it. Maybe other question. please describe some experience you have had in successfully working together with other municipal departments, in particular your town's police department?
Yes, we have a very good relationship with our police department, and our DPW, and most recently our building department, which is super important when it comes to fire prevention and all that. But yeah, any major incidents, you gotta come together in a unified command. So where we have all the department heads in one centralized area. Everybody's gotta be on the same page. And again, that's just, in my mind, that all comes through relationship building. That's gotta take place well before any incident happens. So that everybody knows what everybody's capabilities are, what their role is. Everybody has an understanding, so.
Okay,
So compound question again. If you could change one thing in Hudson, what would it be and why? So that's your first question.
Okay,
Second part, which is kind of converse, what is something you're doing in Hudson that you like a lot that you'd like to bring to Southborough?
that is an interesting question. So the one thing I would change is the past. And if I could explain, that, we went through a long period of time with poor leadership in our department. And it really did a number on the department, and it's taken us years to try to dig out, and we're not even close yet. So I guess I can see the detriment that having some poor leadership can do to a department. It can really set you back a long time. And it's difficult to change the culture and the just the work atmosphere. So that would be the one thing I would change, and I don't know how I would do that without a crystal ball.
Okay, what about something you like you're doing that you would bring with you?
So I hate to keep harping on this, but I would say it's the relationship building within the community, within other departments, and within the department. We're really starting to turn things around when it comes to that. And again, I think it's all relationship building. So I don't know.
Hudson has 2 deputy fire chiefs.
We did until recently. The chief and one of the deputy chiefs retired, and the town has decided not to fill it. So
So you're going to have one.
I'm doing both jobs
So
right now.
Okay, so you're it at this point.
Yes.
Okay, Southport does not have a deputy at this point. We haven't had as long as I know. We
Yep.
talked about it for years and years. Do you believe that is a mistake, that we shouldn't have a deputy?
I think that there are a lot of benefits to having a deputy fire chief, and that is, I would have to see how the workload and everything is here before I would be able to truthfully answer that. But yes, I think there's a lot of benefit in having another set of ears to bounce things off, to divvy up the workload. So yeah, it's situationally dependent, but I've never had a department without one. So I would say yes, but I understand that that's a big commitment for the town.
Just thought you might say that's what you're going to bring with you is.
Can I?
How would you describe your vision of your working relationship with the town administrator and the select board, and how do you make that happen?
So I think that's huge. That's all thing. The fire chief needs to be the go-between between the firefighters and town administrator, have a good relationship with the select board. How I would make that happen is, again, it's just something that happens over time with trust and just proving it on a daily basis. It's not something you can force. But I think that relationship is huge. I think that's how you have a successful department, when you can have somebody who understands where the town's coming from, and where the firefighters are coming from, and is able to bridge that gap. Yeah, that's the key to making it all work in my mind.
It's a hypothetical. Please describe a situation that you would handle differently if you had the ability to do it over. And please walk us through the challenge and tell us how you would resolve it more successfully. Tell us about something that you wish you could redo.
Didn't work.
Besides the whole history of my department. I don't know if I have a specific, but we can do a hypothetical. I guess just regret of not speaking up. If you know, say there's a situation where you believe the right path is, path A, and you don't say anything and you go down path B, the regret is that you didn't go down path A. And so, I mean, that's what I would change, is that I try to follow my conscience, my heart, and do the right thing. So I think as long as you do that, fine. But hypothetically, if I didn't do that and I can reverse that, that would be something. But I don't know if that answers your question.
So we're interested in hearing about your own sense of self and why you believe you'd be the best choice for Southborough. And tell us something that you can share that we wouldn't learn from your resume.
Again, so this is the part that I'm bad at, because I hate talking about
Everybody is.
myself. I like to think I'm a humble person. I like to talk more about my department, my firefighters, my town, and kind of just hang back in the weeds a little bit when it comes to that stuff. But I know that's why I'm here, and that's what y'all want to hear. So I just think I try to be honest, transparent, and do the right thing. Kind of, like I said, so I have three boys, 10, 8, and 4, and I try to lead by example, and I just try to show them, what's the right thing to do. I think if you do the right thing, everything turns out the way it should. So something that you wouldn't learn from my resume maybe would be that I have a wife and 3 boys. Something personal, is that what you want?
Whatever you want.
I mean, I'm a workaholic, so I'm always working, but when I'm not, I like hiking. I'm in the process of hiking all the 4,000 footers in New Hampshire, something like that. So I'm a baseball nut. I just became the vice president of Hudson Youth Baseball. So I got evaluations later tonight. So when we get out of here, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
All right, well, we've gone faster than I thought we would.
Does that mean my answers were too short?
No, I think you answered the question really, to the point concisely, but I think we've got some additional time now.
I have one follow-up.
Yeah,
Sure.
I follow up as well.
Okay, go for it.
At the Marguerite?
Oh, all right. You mentioned that you thought mentoring was important. Just technically and actually, if you get 2 new recruits, how do you set up their mentoring?
So, meaning, so they go on shift?
No, I mean, how do you say, here, this is your mentor? I mean, how do you?
Well, I would try to learn, who's who on the department. So in Hudson, I have a guy. When I get a new guy, I put him on this shift with this guy because I know he is gonna get him snapped in. That's just his mentality. That's who he is on our shift. So I have a really good senior guy that I always put my new guys with. So I would try to identify, who that person or people are in the department, and try to pair them up and kind of let it happen naturally. If there are people that I do identify as mentors, like I would look to sending them out to whatever sort of classes for mentorship that's out there, to kind of help foster that, and then just let it happen naturally. That's kind of how it happens in fire hose. So
Okay, thank you. That's a good answer.
Do you have any questions for us?
I have a million questions.
Well,
for
ask
you. But I don't know if it's specifically for you or the department or,
Give us a try.
I guess one of the questions I have is in regards to software here in town. What do you guys use for like reporting software or databases or anything like that?
We got the experts in the back here.
For our EMS software, we use ESO at this point in time, which tracks all our medical billing, but we also use Comstar for billing as well.
Yep.
Utilizing them gives us almost a 95% payback, which has been fantastic for this town.
Is that third party?
It is third-party billing, yes.
Okay.
And on top of that, a lot of the stuff we do, we've just taken over I am responding for our dispatching and not so much dispatching, but our alerting system.
Yep.
Which is subletted through APS, which is what comes over our phones and which.
Yeah, you can see it on board.
We have fire responding.
But as far as technology, we try and maintain all our stuff, most current stuff. We don't have a whole lot of backlogged equipment, which is really nice.
Yep, so that's ESO is all inventory and everything.
ESOs do our inventory, our scheduling, and our EMS charting. It's actually served us quite well.
And another question that's might be more for these guys is, what do you do for backfill when you do go out on medical? Do you guys backfill?
For medicals, what we do is we run 3 and 2, 3 on the engine, 2 on the ambulance.
Yep.
A group of 5 is once the ambulance goes out, we maintain with 3 people. If we do a 3-person transport, we'll do a recall for 1 member. Anything more than that, we'll recall for the number of people they want to bring in. We never go below 3 people at the station. We try and maintain it at 4, but in most circumstances, we won't go below 3. If we can't get back on recalls, we'll then mutual aid coverage from town if it was that severe. But most probably we rely on our recalls with a very strong call department.
Yep.
For some of the other incidents that come in, so it seems to work.
You do a lot of mutual aid with the ambulance
We do.
surrounding communities.
Through Marlboro, Framingham, and Westboro, and lately been venturing out to North for a little bit lately, and also Ashland, so we quite a big mutual aid ambulance as well. You run, minimum 2 paramedics per group, so we're constantly out the door. We try and maintain as many paramedics here as possible.
All right, thank you. As far as the town, I'm kind of curious about your building department. As far as the building commissioner.
Good question.
We have a vacancy.
Oh, is that right? Okay, but so we do too now. Ours just retired.
Person retired, he resigned, but the previous one had resigned, retired, and then this one resigned. So we've employed the same company that found you to help us find that person. That just started.
So then I have another question, which is following up on Kathy's question about, regional dispatch. So I think the question she asked you was about what value you can add to the select board and the department in helping to make a decision. But another part of that is, let's say the decision is made, either to do it or to not do it, and you're in a position of, you're helping to implement a decision, and you may not necessarily agree with it 100% or not. Can you talk about some examples that you may have had where you're in a position of you're implementing a decision or a policy that you may not 100% agree with, but you need to get buy-in from the rest of the department to do it? And have you been in a position where you've had to do that? Have you seen examples where other people are doing that? If you could comment on that.
So I can use this very example as the example. We in Hudson did our own internal dispatch, firefighters dispatch. When I first got on, we would dispatch, and if it was a fire call, we would then dump the station and go. And the next guy in would dispatch. We then went to the dispatcher not leaving, right? So when we did that, we actually lost a firefighter in the field. And then years later, we went to civilian dispatch at the police station. And this is the scenario. So I personally was against it, even though I knew internally firefighters did not want to dispatch anymore. However, I thought we were going to lose a lot of our, the connection there between the dispatch and the firefighters out in the street, right? So I was against losing it, even though I knew it was gonna gain us a firefighter in the road again, because we were now that firefighter that was solely dispatching is now back on a truck. So I kind of wrestled with that, you know, knowing that we needed the manpower, but we were gonna lose that, information stream. And, but I was one of very few that either felt that way or saw that that was gonna happen maybe. But so I just got on board and, you know, that's what the people wanted. And I'm a team player, I get on board and I helped facilitate it, you know, helped with training of the dispatchers, because once you go that avenue, you know, you don't want it to fail, obviously, it's just gonna hurt the department, so, you know, you get on board and you try to help make it work.
Can I have another question?
Yep.
There's a big debate here now because we have dedicated dispatchers. But there's a sense that if we go into a regional, that whoever's doing the dispatching wherever they are will not be familiar with our streets. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, I mean, so that was one of my issues, that I thought we were gonna lose a lot of that information back and forth, but I don't know now that our dispatchers are super familiar with their streets, they kind of just give you the address, and your firefighters know your street, so, you know, they know where they're going. I think you can train your dispatchers to give you the street, maybe hydrant locations, or, you know, any pertinent information you need that way, but, I think you can get around not knowing the streets. I got a new fire chief now who doesn't know the streets, I'm trying to teach him this, so.
Oh, God, okay.
As long as the driver knows.
Exactly.
And we're gonna have a new fire chief, we may not know the chief. So. All right, does anyone else have any questions? All right, well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Good job.
appreciate it. Yep, off the baseball. Thank you guys. Take care, be safe.
It's smelling out, baseball season will soon be upon us.
Yes.
I might have to.
Did you?
So that worked.
I go into a car, come down, and everybody's just like, you know, very nice and it's which was wrong, that and funny to strong. So for a few seconds here. I think that. Anyway.
Just so everyone's aware, so mics in here are extremely sensitive. So any conversations that you think may be private are actually being picked up by the mics. Just making everyone aware. That's all.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of doing this. I remember here and I was remote, so all of a sudden, in the middle of an issue, you said, hey, I could keep.
This room's good.
It seems longer here. Yeah.
You do that.
I was gonna say, you ready to go?
Yeah.
We'll wait.
Oh, wait. I didn't see your number down.
Thank you for the
Where did that
email.
go?
by the way.
Okay.
Okay, let me introduce you next. Larry.
I've got a terrible cold. You don't want to get here.
How are you?
See you guys. See you.
Okay, so good evening, Chief McDonald. So the format we have is we've got an hour for each candidate. And we're gonna ask a series of 15 questions. And so to stay kind of on time, my thought was we'll try to keep the question and answer for each module to about 4 minutes. Now, I think we found that it's actually longer than you think, so I don't feel like you need to cut short your answer in any way. But that's just the kind of format that we're going to follow here. So the first is a pretty general opening one. Can you please tell us about your fire service career, why you initially entered the field, why you're interested in this position, and why you believe you would be successful here in Southborough? And if you can really speak to the issue of why Southborough.
Good. Well, I was born and raised in Southbridge into a firefighting family. My father was on the job for 30 years in Southbridge. He retired after falling through a roof at a fire. As a captain, went out on disability. My uncle was also a firefighter in the Air Force, and then later on in Valesgate, New Windsor, Newburgh, New York. So that's how I kind of gravitated to it. My brother was on the job in Southbridge. I have two nephews, one in Southbridge, one in Chapman, who are on the job. And so it's really a family calling. And that's what first drove me to it. I started off as a member of the Explorer Post, the Fire Department Explorer Post in Southbridge. And from there, when I turned 16, I graduated to the Auxiliary Fire Department. At the time, it was 19 to get on civil service, or 21 in many of the other departments to get a full-time job. So I had some friends, including my uncle and some other friends, had gone into the Air Force. And so I sought to get my training and education by going into Air Force Fire Protection. And it turns out that I really enjoyed the service a great deal. I ended up making a 21-year career. And that's how I got most of my training and my certifications, and then also my college degree up through my bachelor's. So that's really what attracted me to the fire service. It's definitely something that gets into your blood, and you're there to help people. Then in terms of, I'm sorry, I know it's a pretty long.
Yeah, it was a pretty long, just general question, kind of introducing yourself. I think you just spoke to your military experience, and then
background.
so then at a certain point you moved into you retired from the Air Force, wanted to begin municipal. So
right. Yeah, so I figured it might be good to give a little bit of personal side too. I am married. I have 3 daughters and a stepson. He's on the job actually in Westboro. So my wife is a oncology nurse at UMass. So we're kind of service oriented family, as you can see. So after my years in the Air Force, it just so happened at the time I was retiring, the job opened up for the first full-time chief's position in Dudley. So I was fortunate enough to get selected for that job. I did that for 2 years. Then an opportunity opened up at the Mass Fire Academy. And so I did that for a year, and then moved on to the National Fire Protection Association, and later on to Munson, and then to Oxford, and then to come to Southborough. So in terms of why I'm interested in Southborough, so interestingly enough, I've been spending an awful lot of time in the risk assessment plan and the standards of cover and the strategic plan. And I started spending my time in that when it was first published back a few years ago, because when I moved into Oxford, one of my biggest goals has been to get a fire department accredited at some point through the Center for Public Safety Excellence. that was something the Air Force had transitioned to just before I retired, and that's their real big hallmark, I think, on the professionalism of Air Force fire protection. So in looking to do that in Oxford, I was looking for similarly situated communities that, best practices on the whole Southborough came. So, and incidentally, I did apply in 2018 when Steve Achilles was selected for the job. Anyway, I'm spending an awful lot of time in those plans, and then looking at the master plan. I'm familiar with the master plan, the original one going back to 2002, or the predecessor plan, and then the one that was most recently updated in 2022. So when you see a community that is well organized, taking the master plan, extending it out to the fire department, the individual departments and whatnot, and seeing how that all ties in together, that's pretty impressive. And knowing and understanding, the Southborough, Westborough, this area, the core of the IT core, if you will, and what it has to offer, there's a lot of attraction to it. You consider the community being top 15 per capita for income. Your bond ratings for the two most prestigious organizations, pretty solid gold. There's a lot of opportunity. So when the job opened up again, it's an opportunity for job growth and enrichment. Really, I think I'm quite stable in Oxford. I've enjoyed my time there. I'm not really looking to just jump ship, and I wouldn't just look to go anywhere. So it was looking at what Southborough had to offer. And when you see the effort to bring the master plan and all the other plans in line, that's not something that happens in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen by itself or just because of the plan. It happens because a whole host of people behind it that make it happen. And that shows teamwork. And that's on the part of the citizens who basically allow and provide for that opportunity to happen, the political leadership to basically adopt it, and then the administration of the town to put it into action.
All right, thank you.
So Larry, describe the leadership style, your leadership style, and how you would interact with members of this department. As a leader, specifically illustrate how you make sure everyone in the organization knows what is expected of them. So we're looking for some specific examples of that.
Sure, great. So one of the things that I was able to glean and learn in the Air Force is, there's an adaptive approach to leadership. Leadership isn't something you just don't adopt a particular style. You really have to adapt your style to the environment, to the people and the situation. Right? The situational approach to leadership, I think, is pretty well known with Dr. Ken Blanchard and others who kind of came up with that system. So that's something that I learned and was ingrained in me in the Air Force, and it's been very successful in the Air Force and for myself. So, and I think it's really gained some traction also in the fire service. You'll see it in the HISTA manuals for company officer and chief officer, or at least it had been in the past. So what that means is that, depending on the role that the person that you're supervising is playing and the role of the leader, you take on whatever role is necessary for that person's motivation levels and their skill level. So for example, you have a new recruit. You're basically going to have more of a telling type relationship, more directed, because they're new. They have a lot of motivation to do the job, but they need some support. So they may need the guidance and everything. So that's where the role of the company officer and the chiefs and whatnot to provide that direction and get them their training. And then you gradually move towards a selling and coaching type approach. And then you hope to get them to the point where their skill level is so adaptive and good that you now delegate them and turn things over to them. And the thing about that model is it changes over the life cycle of somebody's career. You may get an experienced firefighter now who, let's say, is 10 years, 12 years on the job, and that they know their job as a firefighter inside and out. When the officer's off duty, they may fill in as a company officer. But now they get promoted, let's say, to lieutenant or to captain. They're highly skilled technicians when it comes to the EMS side or to the fire side. Now they need a little bit more support and coaching in the new role of a company officer. So you change you adapt your leadership to that type of. And I think, the rest of it kind of plays out as a little bit self-explanatory. So, the idea is to get to the point where if you have a deputy working for you, that's somebody who's well-motivated, well-experienced, that you can delegate a lot of things to them, and you just play the role of making sure things are getting done.
Do you have a deputy in Oxford?
I have two.
How big is Oxford population wise?
So population wise, it's 14,000, just a little bit bigger than Southborough, very, really mostly similar, but we're 26 square miles. We have 2 fire stations because we're so far apart. North end from the south end will take 25 minutes to get there. So when I first started, it was a chief and a deputy. We had a vacated assistant chief position that was in the union. Through our first rounds of negotiations when I was there, we negotiated with the union to take and convert that assistant chief position to a second deputy position, because in organizational charts, you don't, if you have management that kind of goes this way and then flattens out, you get too much management in the middle, right? So we wanted more of a pyramid structure. And it had to be, something that made sense. So I took it to the manager and she looked at it and said, this looks like it would work for us. And so we had like a matrix structure, if you will. So one deputy is in charge of one station, the other deputy is in charge of the other. They each work out of their respective stations. And then one is in terms of like duties and responsibilities. One's administration and finance, and the other one is responsible for community risk reduction and fire prevention. So that's how we did that there. And then we have three lieutenants and a captain. We are in the process right now of actually having 4 captains and 4 lieutenants, so that we have a senior company officer and a junior company officer on each ship, and a total ship of 5 complement, just like you have here.
Thank you.
2-part question. First, how do you create an atmosphere of respect and cooperation within the department? And second, what's your strategy for managing interdepartmental conflict? And maybe
Very good. Yeah, actually, I think I missed a part of another question, which kind of ties into this. So, but it's really important when you come into a new organization right away, so that everybody knows where you're coming from and where they're coming from. You meet with everybody to get a sense of what their goals and objectives are for the department. Tie them all in together, because we come into this job because we want to make a difference. So there's a common ground. So you get that common ground. You establish your standards right up front. So normally because I have gone to several different organizations now, when you go in, the first thing I do is I meet with everybody. I get that sense from them, and I also establish clear what my expectations are, based upon what the community wants and what the law requires and what the responsibilities ethically and morally for what we do in terms of our core business. So when you set that out for them and, everybody's on the same page, then, that's your starting point. And it starts really mostly with, we're all on the same page because we know why we came in this profession and we know how important it is. And then in terms of dealing with conflict, the best thing to do is just keep communication. If conflict is developing, you want to prevent it. You can prevent it by establishing what the expectation is and setting your standards up front. And I think in terms of what I can see from the outside looking in, when you look at your strategic plan and just how the department is structured, I think you've got a good start right there, right? The goals and objectives for the department are set forth in that strategic plan. It was done by a committee of members and they got buy-in. So you communicate the standards and then you hold people accountable to the standards. And most of the time, it just takes sitting down with talking to somebody and saying, listen, you know what the expectation is here. You violated the expectation. This is what you need to do to fix it. And most of it can be done just by communication and those kind of interactions. We think about discipline, right? Well, in some cases, people view discipline perhaps as punishment, but it's really not. The root word of discipline is disciple. It implies an instructional relationship. And over the years, what I've learned is that there's really 4 types of discipline. There's self-discipline, task discipline, group discipline, and imposed discipline. Most of us have that intrinsic self-discipline, right, that stems itself from the nature of what we do and how important it is to us. And that focuses on that particular approach. Task discipline comes from the task itself. When you take into consideration a paramedic, a crew of paramedics who are going out on an ambulance call, or a fire crew of 4 who are going to a structure fire, the task is pretty obvious that it's critical and it's severe, and that lends itself to certain actions and a certain amount of discipline that has to come. When people are trained for that, they have that common background, that kind of ties them together. So I think, when people know and understand that aspect, the group discipline takes over. Everybody knows what the expectation is, and if somebody steps out of line, the group brings them back in. That's typically how organizations work. And the last step is imposed discipline, which usually it happens less often than most people think. So that's kind of how I would articulate that and kind of group it together to explain it.
Thank you.
A major challenge of most fire departments is employee recruitment and retention. What experience do you have with this? I think this is like a three-part question. And what ideas would you bring to Southborough for confronting this issue? And beyond traditional advertising portals, what creative ideas do you have for outreach? I will remember all those parts, so I can.
Okay, I'll do my best to keep that encapsulated. Well, yes, it is a problem. I think when we talk as peers in terms of the fire service, we look at two aspects to that. In some cases, it's the danger of the job, the cancer-related aspect of it, and then the other aspect of it is really burnout, because you have small numbers of people. And a lot because communities can't afford a really what I would refer to as a right-sized fire department. Everything we do is functional on the fire ground, but we don't have a lot of fires, so people have that concept of less fires, less firefights. And that to me kind of equates to saying that because the Red Sox played 15 games fewer this year than they did last year, we can cut the team down from 9 to 7. You can't really do that because it's positional in nature. So firefighting is kind of like when you are splitting crews between having what I would say should say cross-staffing crews between fire and ambulance, it becomes arduous trying to bounce back and forth when you're shifting gears from going to a fire call, now having to go and staff for an ambulance. Those things cost attention. Ideally, it would be nice if you could have a crew dedicated to an ambulance and a crew dedicated to the fire truck, and every now and then swap them back and forth. Most communities can't afford that right now. So there needs to be something to address that in the future. But in the meantime, how do you stem the bleed? My experience with it has come in two different ways. A lot of times people are looking to progress because it's part of their compensation. They need to take care of their families. So they're going to gravitate to a department that is going to meet their financial needs. And they're also going to look for something that has good work-life balance. And that can be tough in the fire service. So when a community is committed to trying to retain people, you've got to look at that whole thing. You've got to find out, you've got to conduct surveys, talk to the people, find out why they're leaving. What would it take to retain them? Because there is a balance between, and I learned this even stemming back many years in the military. I've been retired for 20 years now, but the job satisfaction, not always paying benefits that keeps people. That's in the top 3, but job satisfaction and basically having the wherewithal to do the job play a significant part. And I think when you can find those balance, it works out. Now, I'm going through that right now in Oxford. When I started in 2019 in Oxford, we had 3 shifts of 4, 1 shift of 3. We weren't anywhere near where we needed to staff 2 ambulances. We were operating at a 1 station. We had some real long delayed responses to the north end. And so the goal was to try to figure out how we could open up the 2nd station with our current configuration and whatnot. And then make the expansion. COVID actually threw us into that a little bit early. So what I did is my approach was to talk to the company officers, and I asked them, I gave them 3 assignment with 3 caveats. I said, I want you to give me how we could staff this doing what we currently have, how we could do it if we expanded the department with additional staffing. And, the other one, pie in the sky, however you think, and I really got some great ideas, and we ended up adopting, the reasonableness aspects of what they presented to us to get it done. And it showed that we needed to recruit more people. We needed to get the shifts at some point from 3 with 4 and 1 with 3, with all 4 being up to 5, and then a plan to progress it going forward. So now we're at the 5, and that allows us to have a minimum staffing of 4, keep two stations staffed, and ambulance response times in both ends open. The next step we had to work on was the pay and compensation, because we were one of the lowest paid departments. So in this most recent round of negotiations, we knew we had to fix the bottom end of the pay scale. We were starting firefighter EMTs at $18.47 an hour, when somebody who's working at Walmart or Dunkin' Donuts is making $19, $20, $21 an hour. So we worked with the union. The final product was where we had a pay scale where we saw 33% increases on the lower end and 3.5%, 3.8% on the upper end to balance it all out. That made it financially doable for the town And that was, we fixed the problem before the fiscal year, implemented in the fiscal year. The only times now, I've got one person who just told me yesterday they were leaving, and it's only because her husband got a promotion at work and is going to Ohio. So Ohio's going to get a great firefighter. Oxford's going to lose one. But my point is that started to stem some of the bleed. There's still more work to be done. The other thing that we did we had an Explorer program in Oxford. COVID and some other things kind of knocked that down for a little bit, but we ended up starting a program with the Oxford High School where we're training juniors and seniors in the firefighter one curriculum. We started last year. We're now in our second year. We've had 13 students both years in a row. It's gotten good reviews, and we're looking to use that as a mechanism to recruit them. The next step we're looking to do is what we're talking about now is making the fire portion of it the junior year, and then EMS, basic EMT the following year, so that by the time they're seniors, when they come out and graduate, you get somebody who you can technically under NFPA 1500 put on an apparatus because they're trained to firefighter one and they have the EMT. In terms of the other pieces of recruiting, there's, I think where I see successes is a friend of mine who I was stationed with years ago in England as a fire chief in Willimantic, Connecticut. He goes to every single one of the job fairs that the schools in the area have, sets up a booth, and does some active recruitment that way. And he's gotten some pretty good people that way. So those are things that I've looked at possibly doing in the future. I know that the National Registry of EMTs is concerned about it, not just from the fire side alone, the EMS and the burnout, because in this year's getting recertified, there was a survey on it. So it's becoming a national issue.
Okay, so the Southborough Fire Department's getting newer firefighters with less experience that will need mentoring. How do you develop a culture in the department that acknowledges this without excluding your more experienced members?
Well, really, I think you've got the roadmap already in place, the strategic plan, which has the first two goals, establishing training and professional development for entry-level firefighters, and then also the company officer staff. I mean, that's, I can't emphasize enough. You'll hear it. It sounds like it's just a cliche, but training and professional development are the keys to keeping people engaged, keeping them trained. And like in Oxford, and even when I was in Munson, company officers, we got them trained to the fire instructor 1 level and fire instructor 2 level, keep them engaged. They do the training for their crews and mentor them along that way. And that's why I think it's important too to have a career path. Like there's some departments that have just all captains, they don't have any lieutenants. So some that just have lieutenants and no captains. And it may seem like, that kind of seems management top heavy, but it's really not. If you think about it in terms like, and I hate to keep military, but it is a paramilitary profession, right? You have a squad that's made up of staff sergeants, corporals, and privates and whatnot. So in each one of those ranks may have certain responsibilities in terms of leadership. But fire department's no different. When you have if you have a firefighter that's filling in as a company officer, and I know Charlton has all captains and they have an X, what they call an X, a senior firefighter who gets extra pay to be in charge when the captain's not there. Well, you're going to have an X, you might as well have a lieutenant if that's really the proper rank for it. That's a supervising fire officer. If you look at it in terms of the rank and the certification, fire officer 1, supervising fire officer 2, managing fire officer, lieutenant captain, fire officer 3, administrative fire officer, those are your battalion chiefs and assistant chiefs, deputies, and then fire officer 4, executive fire officer, or chiefs. So when you have a good training plan like that in place, and you now adapt that into the organization, and they are playing the role of mentor, you're giving them opportunities to grow in the job and then perform in those positions. The captain goes on vacation, the lieutenant's in charge, you're keeping them engaged. And I think that's kind of how you build that into. That's usually what engages. It gives them additional responsibilities too. The other thing is people look for things to do. Somebody may be interested in taking care of the power tools and equipment, others managing hose, things of that nature. So, and it makes it beneficial because that also gives you continuity. If somebody leaves, somebody else to pass on their knowledge in different areas.
All right. I think I have the next question. Please describe your current fire department in terms of its services, staffing, organization, and specialized characteristics. And then based on your research of Southborough's department, what are the similarities and what are the differences?
Well, the similarities are, we're an all hazards type of department, right? Oxford's no about the same as the Southborough. So we're trained to do all hazards, man-made disasters, fire, EMS, you name it, we're going to kind of deal with it. Also, emergency management. Emergency management deals with the planning aspects of things, right? The 4 phases: planning, response, recovery, mitigation, and those things. So from that standpoint, we're postured to do the same thing. The communities our size require people to be dual trained. You can't rely on somebody who's just a medic or somebody who's just a firefighter. You got to have somebody who can do the EMS and the fire. And that's something that out of California years ago in the 60s and 70s, they found the fire service to be very suited for that because we deal with all these different functions. So we will deal with the hazmat from the standpoint of the operations level, which is defensive in nature. We'll call in the state for support. So that's, the numbers of people on duty and available to respond are the same. We have just now moved to 4 ambulances. We staff 2. We have the 3rd one that's can be staffed during the day with the administrative staff, either the 2 deputies or very rarely myself, but because I got such a good staff that kind of ties in with everybody. But we just added a 4th ambulance, so we're able to rotate them in and out. I think there's 2 in South, so if I remember correctly. So there's more similarities than there are real differences. As far as specialized skill set, everybody for being in a position, and I see it according to the plan here, it's the same. You've got to be fire officer to be a fire officer. You've got to have the right certification level, professional qualifications, and the right level of training to occupy a position. It's the same thing in Oxford. The other thing is we have people who participate in specialized teams. We have people on the dive team, the regional dive teams, the regional rescue teams. We support that. We also house one of the state hazmat trucks. So I've got people who are trained to drive that. And I believe you have similar, people here. And we have also people who work at the fire academy. So that's a good resource. And I'm pretty sure you have some people who work as instructors and maybe in the crib over at the fire academy. There's a lot of benefits that brings to a community. So those, like I said, I see more similarities than I do in differences.
Thank you.
Chief, does Oxford have a regional emergency center? How do you do your dispatch? Local?
We're local, yeah.
So Southborough has been considering joining a regional emergency communication center rec for about 2 years. Our previous chief, Kelly's, kind of got the ball rolling. We've had studies and we've kind of gone back and forth. So it's the select board's decision to do this executive body. Definitely want input from others. How would you help the select board if you were named chief get to this decision, to finally make a decision on whether to enhance the local dispatch, which is what we're being told we need to do if we don't do regional, or go to the regional version of dispatch?
Yeah. So when I was in Munson, we were starting the process to regionalize. It takes a long time. It really does. I started in Munson in 2012. By the time I left in 2019, they still hadn't regionalized. They have now with Western. So there's a lot of moving parts and decisions that have to happen behind the scene. You really got to do a lot of analysis. And I think in some cases, like the concept is people look at the regionalization saying, is this going to save us money? And it may, but more often than not, in my experience and just looking at it, in the rearview mirror, is more often it improves efficiency. It may not necessarily cost less. You still have to have infrastructure to take care of. The good news is though you're down spreading that amongst several, 2 or 3 or several communities, rather than having to do it on your own.
Okay, so let me just keep. So we've got a lot of choices we looked at. We looked at ones that exist that we could join. We're looking at one that would be a new one that would be part of. We're looking at possibly enhancing what we have locally. So how would you help us get to what we hope would be a good decision here?
Without having knowledge of what information available, I have to look at what information you have in terms of, you know, the differences between the ones to be able to, you know, look and see which one and make a recommendation. You know, in many cases, if you have one that's already existing and they have the capacity to bring you in, that's usually the easiest, you know, probably most cost effective. Standing a new one up, which is what they did in Westcom, that involves more money, more time, because you have to have, in cases of Westcom, they had temporary facilities and now they're in the process of getting permanent. So then you have to get the money for that and everything. So I would say, you know, looking at the situation, which is going to be best, what financially can the town support, and what's the logistics behind going into an existing facility. You know, and then also looking at the thing about trying to run your own dispatch, and like, which is what Oxford did. Oxford looked to regionalize and they decided it wasn't a good move for them. Now we're looking at it again because it's hard to retain good dispatchers, you know, and to have enough of them to cover, you know, because ideally it's like anything else. We work in pairs in the fire service for a reason, you know, in most cases, and the places that I've worked, I did some time in Delaware as a volunteer firefighter while I served at Dover Air Force Base. The 911 centers there, each console had two people, somebody to work the phones and somebody to work the radio. And that was for each specialty. So you had a console for EMS, you know, a console for PD and a console for fire, you know. You got to have, but that's on a county level. You can fund that kind of stuff on a county level. Massachusetts, when we made the decision to do away with county government, we kind of took that option away from them. So now it's up to the communities to kind of fend for themselves. And so if you can have the right communities to be able to do it with the right funding source, you can get it done. But I think regionalization is just by nature of the recruitment issue. And a lot of that has to do with pay and benefits and retirement in the group, you know, group 1 versus group 2, that sort of thing. But I would say, you know, I have to look at the data. My inclination and my sense would be those that make it the easiest transition is to look at something that's already pre-existing that you can kind of plug into and adapt.
Thank you.
Southborough operates in a reasonably complicated environment here where we've got several major highways where there could be big motor vehicle accidents with potential hazard issues. Now we've got 4 major academic institutions here. What experience do you have in responding to and managing complex, large-scale public safety incidents?
Well, Oxford has 395, the Mass Pike and Route 20 running through it, and CSX railway, north and south, and another railway running east and west. So we deal with that. We're on 395 quite a bit. So I have experience with that. In terms of being in the Air Force, I've dealt with some pretty complex incidents, from plane crashes to hazmat incidents, days long hazmat incidences. You know, because an aircraft comes from overseas and who knows what it was carrying over into the area of operation. When it comes back, you've got people falling sick. It takes a long time to manage that kind of stuff. So I have experience with operational periods in terms of that, wildland firefighting, both in Munson was 44 square miles, and part of Douglas is in Oxford, but the Brimfield State Forest was also in Munson, monitoring there. So we did a lot of brush and actual type fires there. So I've managed, I assisted Paul Foster in Holland with a multi-day forest fire. So I've handled some pretty complex incidents. Yeah.
Thank you.
This has 2 parts. What level of involvement have you had in budget creation and budget management? And what do you consider the most challenging part of budget?
Yes. So I've had to participate in budget formulation in many different facets, you know, from formulating them from scratch to, you know, taking them on from pre-existing years and whatnot. So zero-based budgeting, line item budgeting. When I was my last assignment in the Air Force was as the certification the manager for the Department of Defense. I was the career field manager for all Air Force firefighters. And at that time, we were transitioning from paper-based career development courses, so you'd enroll in a firefighter upgrade training course, like firefighter, let's say fire officer one, you got a stack of books and whatnot to study and go through. And we segued that into CD-ROM based business learning. I had to build those budgets pretty much from scratch. We had to just, we call POM, P-O-M, right, to get the funds. So $750,000 for a driver operator course for crash fire rescue vehicles, 125,000 for a fire inspector course. So I've done those kind of project budgets and then municipal budgets, just the way we do them. In terms of like Oxford or Munson, I would take my budget and formulate it. In Munson, I was a strong chief and answer to the Board of Selectmen, so I formulate my budget and bring it before the selectmen, get their approval, and then bring it before the finance committee and justify my budget. In Oxford, it starts with me, and then I sit down with the town manager and we work out what she can support, and then again we go to the finance committee. So, yeah, pretty extensive budgeting experience. And I've had budgets as small as 700,000 and as large as 12 million. I was Dover Air Force Base and I was deputy chief. We had a $12 million budget.
You have experience writing and obtaining grants. What resources have you been able to provide in this area to grant funding? And tell us how you've been able to both execute the grant and then also manage the project successfully.
So the Air Force is kind of out there because we don't get grants. That's the federal government side of it. So my first experience with grants was in Dudley. But when I was there, I was able to get a grant to buy what is their engine one. It was a Class A tanker pumper, 2,500 gallons. We got that. It's 200-something thousand, long time ago now, right? 2005. We also ended up getting some donations from the community. So the truck ended up not costing the town anything. They took care of our cost share portion and then actually outfitting the truck. And we had some money left over that we used it as maintenance later on. We also, I also was successful in getting a $64,000 grant for the safe trailer that they have in Dudley. Then later on in Munson, we got turnout gear. When I was in Holland, as a call firefighter there, and I was the emergency management director of the Paul Foster. We got a $24,000 grant, I think it was, that I wrote for radios. And then in Oxford, we got new air packs, a complete set of new upgraded air packs, the emergency management planning grant, hazard mitigation grant. So, getting them out there, keeping track of them, applying for them and managing them. So I'm really fortunate because when we start to do these grants and I bring in my team, right? So now if it's anything dealing with fire prevention, the deputy and the community risk reduction, he can take care of all that. We work it, we develop it, we get it in. We get the money, and we execute. He's responsible for executing it, doing all the reporting and everything. My other deputy is really good with EMPG grants and the other ones. So the way I'm sure it's the same in Southborough as it is in Oxford and Munson. All that money, once you're successful in getting the grant, it goes to the finance people. They're really good about setting up the accounts and they're tracking stuff, and you work with them. Sure. And execution is just. Usually I can just say to the person I make the project officer, this is what we're going to do. I have officers meetings once a month where we keep track of things, but you give somebody that responsibility of executing the grant, they're happy to spend the money and make sure it's documented and obtained. So I've been very, very fortunate and successful with grants. My town manager in Oxford is as well. So it kind of helps to have that team approach,
Right. So I think the next question comes back to me. Please describe some experiences you've had in successfully working together with other departments in your municipality, and in particular with your town's police department.
Well, I always tell when I was in Munson, when I left there, I used to tell Steve Kozlowski he's the best police chief I ever worked with. And now I got to be careful because I got two more successive ones that were really fantastic to work with. So the police department is part of our response force. They're first responders, and a lot of times they're out in the cruisers. They're trained to the first responder level, right? In most cases, they have AED, some cases they have Narcan. They can be pretty much to a T. They can be on scene in accordance with the NFPA response standards within about 240 seconds, right? Because they're out roving around. I found that to be true in Munson, even as big as that was. It's definitely true in Oxford. And we integrate just as a team, especially if you got somebody, a police officer there, they're working a code, they're pumping on somebody's chest. They're waiting for you to show up. You get there, we all transition. It's right into the rotation. Somebody switches off, takes over compression, somebody else is doing the ventilations and that sort of thing. So it's important to keep that good relationship going. And like I said, I've been very fortunate with Chief Kozlowski, then Chief Sandley in Oxford, and now we have Chief Mike Daniels, who came to us from Westboro. We have quarterly dispatch meetings, because we have the shared dispatch, and make sure that we're all on the same page and everybody has the expectations, knows what they are and adheres to them. That's, I think, is what's key to having such a good.
So in Southborough, dispatch is under police, although it's shared, but how is it structured?
It was in Munson and Oxford, it was the same, although Munson now is in West Palm, but while I was there, it was under the police. But the way it worked in Munson and the way it works in Oxford, anything dealing with fire, the policy comes from the fire department and goes through, in this case now it's Lieutenant Burnett. So they defer to us as the experts, but there's no friction because everybody understands the criticality. They're not concerned that they're getting paid by the police department, they're getting paid by the town of Oxford, and it's all one team. So we know how critical that line is, that link. And so we keep the lines of communication open. If it's two-way street, for example, we had an issue, to just give you just a small example. It's really hard for the dispatchers when they're dealing with the police officers that are out on the road and with the ambulances that are out. There may be 2 ambulances out and a couple of cruisers. They're dealing with radio traffic all the time. So the dispatchers approached us and said, you got to have your people when they call us, wait a minute, don't give us all the information. If they have them call us and just wait for a minute, wait for us to answer back before they give us the information, because all we're going to do is say, can you say that again? Repeat. Little things like that, when you can resolve them, go back to the staff and say, listen, put it in a policy. This is how we're going to do the radio, so it's easier for the dispatchers. They appreciate it, and they know that their voice is heard. That's just a small thing. It's many times having your policy stated up front helps, and then if you have these little one-offs, then you fix them as they go. And communication and working together is the key.
So, Larry, what would you like to change in your current Oxford Police Fire Department? That's the first question. I hate complicated questions. That's the first one. The second one is, what do you think you do really well there that you'd like to bring with you if you were to be appointed Southborough Fire Chief?
Good. Well, so what I think we do well.
Yeah, no, first of all, what problem do you think needs to be fixed
Right.
that you really would like to fix it? It's not fixed. That's first thing. Then what do you do well that you bring with you here?
So what we fixed the pay scale. The next step, and we're in the process of fixing that if we get approval at town meeting for implementing the promotion path, creating the lieutenants. So we would promote the 4 privates to lieutenant and 3 lieutenants to captain. So we have the 4 captains and 4 lieutenants. So I think that's going to go. So that would be one thing. If I had to fix anything else, I think it's important at some point. Oxford, as big as it is, it first went full-time in 2003. So it's relatively new career department. And it hasn't really grown and kept pace in the manner that for the mission that it has. I would like to see there be 4 people at each station. That's what I would like to see. It's just not doable right now. But I would like to have a plan in place. And my goal is to work to the point where we have 3 at station 1 now and 2 at station 2. I'd like to be 3 and 3 and then 4 and 4. And that gives us the ability to have 2 fully staffed engines if we can get them out on the road, or the ambulance is staffed. Right now, for a fire call, we have to run as a split engine company from 2 stations. That's very, very different. Right? Minimum staffing on a fire engine should be 4 people for the tasks. Yeah. But because we have to staff an ambulance for response times at each end, we have to break up the crews. But it would be ideal if I could get an engine and an engine out of each station rather than operating a split engine crew together.
So we get that, and now what do you do well that you'd like to bring with you?
What I think we do really well is our training program, which I think you have a training program too. So I don't know if you use Lexipol or some of these the learning management systems that are out there. It was a game changer for us when we adopted and used the Lexipol training module. We only had enough money to do the fire one initially. Now we're looking at bringing in the EMS portion because it's an enhancement. It helps us to be able to get the academic portion of training at the individual's pace when they're on shift and they have time, right? We're running about 10 calls a shift, so for about 12 hours out of a 24-hour shift, the crews are out of the station. When they come back, they still got to do their maintenance stuff. They got to get some time to rest and be ready for the next call. So it kind of gives them some flexibility to get the academic portion of their training done. So I think that's a big help. You can see an improvement too in people's motivation and putting stuff into use in that. I would think, in terms of retention and whatnot too, developing the career path. One of the things I think we're doing good is the community's had the buy-in to improve the fire department and make that investment. They did it by increasing the staff. They did it by supporting the addition of a second deputy. But I think, looking at the structure, what I see here, I think you need a deputy at some point in Southborough. And I think there should be a career path to the lieutenant and then a captain position. So you have that designation of somebody being able to take over the shift when the captain's out and having a senior company officer be able to mentor and train a junior company. So that sort of thing. We've been able to, I don't know what the departure rate's been like if you've had a revolving door. We had a real bad revolving door for the first 2 years, 2.5 years I was at Oxford, and it's kind of slowed down now. I just kind of hold my breath when I see announcements go out. But like I said, the most recent departure is because spouse has got a promotion. But for the last year, it's been pretty stable. So I'd like to bring some stability, find ways that we can keep the people who are in place to want to stay. I mean, there's so much about the community that you have that's so positive in terms of, like I said, the bond rating, the ability to get things done, and just the stability of what it looks like in your planning documents. There's a lot of good selling points and benefits to being part of a community that you have.
Always room for improvement.
Oh yeah, always.
Same.
Thanks. Can you tell us how you describe your vision of your working relationship with the town administrator and select board, and how will you make it happen?
Well, I think professionalism and common courtesy is a start. I mean, we all have a common goal. It's understanding that the community there's the greater community needs. So and again, example going back to the police and working with the town manager. We had needs in Oxford to replace equipment, but the police department needed a cruiser. We needed to add staff. DPW had needs. So by understanding, what the needs are of each department, we all were able to sit down and work together and understanding respectfully what we all had things we needed to accomplish and communicating those goals and objectives. And it helps to have, like I said, some type of planning document. The police one year decided, the police chief looked at it and said, okay, I can forego a cruiser this year. And that gave us the ability to add the additional person, number 4 on one of the shifts. Another time it was DPW giving up, replacing a dump truck to get us a new ambulance or something like that. And us giving up something later on down the road. When we got the grant for the air packs, we had money put aside because we knew we were going to have to replace them, but we got the money from the grant. We were able to take the money that was allocated and redistribute it. Some of it was used to buy command vehicles and the other part of it was pushed off to the DPW. So having that understanding of the needs, the professional respect and deference, and understanding the roles, that the select board is elected by the people, they're the representatives of the people, so you have those consequences to think about. There's a certain amount of political and professional deference that as a department head or a leader on the municipal side, you have to respect and understand about that. Because in the final analysis, the org chart is controlled by the people, who we serve. So, understanding and respecting those roles, and I think is what establishes those relationships. And that to me is what, if I look at why I've been successful, it's not just because of me, it's because of that team. That's what I referred to it, the oath. Thank you.
This is a hypothetical. Please describe a situation that you would handle differently if you had the ability to do it over. Okay, and part two. Please walk us through that challenge and tell us how well, I think this is the same thing. Please walk us through the challenge and tell us how you would resolve it more successfully. That's the same.
Yeah. I had a situation in which I was in a particular position that I felt like I was really being micromanaged. And just didn't have this, the level of responsibility I had, I didn't have the latitude to be able to do it. So my approach at them was to say, I tried the communication route, but I got resistance, and this is quite a few years ago now. Didn't pursue it. I don't want to say aggressively enough, but I've been more proactively enough. I backed off a little bit too soon on trying to open up the lines of communication. My approach was to in some sense, go back on my word, because I said I would stay in a particular position for a length of time. But I got frustrated and I decided, well, I'm just going to look to move on. And that, it caused some problems. And looking back at what I would have done differently is try to go back to my supervisor at the time and communicate a lot better, say, try to find out, really have a heart to heart. I think I was not, I didn't have the fortitude enough to have that heart to heart conversation, simply because I let the noise in the background, perhaps intimidation, keep me from having that dialogue. And in reflection, as I learned as I got older, I think if I would have gone back, sat down with the individual, really laid it out and say, how can we fix this? If the relationship was going south, how can we fix it? And so that's always stuck with me. And so kind of use that as a signpost to say, if it does happen, this is what I'm going to do to try to fix it.
Thank you.
Okay. We're just to find out a little bit more about you and give us your own sense of self and why you think you'd be the best choice for Southborough, and what's something you can share that we wouldn't learn on your resume.
In 1987, I was fortunate enough to get selected as one of the 12 outstanding airmen of the year for the United States Air Force. It had to do with a lot of things. Some of it was I was involved in a lot of things because I was a geek. I was in the ham radio, so I participated in the military affiliate radio system. That has big morale effects. Back then in the 80s, we didn't have cell phones, so when you were overseas in Japan or Korea, you wanted to make a phone call home. You did that by what they call MARS, military affiliate radio system. I do that kind of thing. That got me some recognition. I was really big in getting involved in functions that the fire department was doing. So that got me some recognition. But the biggest thing was tomorrow will be the 38th anniversary of what was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my fire service career. It was an explosion and fire of a fuel storage tank containing 700,000 gallons of JP4 jet fuel. Killed 16 people, injured 33. I was working that day, just happened to be there. I was assigned to the rescue truck, so by virtue of what I did, not because of me, but because of the position I was in and what I had to do, that garnered me some recognition, which eventually resulted in me being nominated for this award. And I got to meet, we got to Washington, D.C. They made a big deal for the 12 of us. It happens every year in the Air Force. And I got to meet President Reagan. So that was a pretty think that, I mean, it's not something that's, I talk about an awful lot, but if you come in my office, people see the picture and they say, oh, you met the president. And those are kind of the circumstances that kind of led up to it. And part of being one of the 12 outstanding airmen of the year, you spend 12 months a year on the Air Force Enlisted Advisory Council, advising the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and the Chief Master of the Air Force on enlisted matters, which like retention and the other things. So that gave me some pretty interesting experiences in terms of that.
All right, well, we've got, a little bit of time left. Any other, the board has some follow-up questions, Al?
What would you like to know from us?
Well, what do you think the chief, whoever is the chief, the successful candidate coming in, what do you think the chief should, I know we talked about recruitment and retention. What are some of the things you think you're looking for in the chief and for the chief to do for the fire?
Well, I'll just say this, the next chief is gonna have really big shoes to fill, because we all thought Chief Achilles really did an outstanding job. And I like to think it was someone that's, he was someone that he could communicate well with both us as the select board and with the administration, but also with the fire department, right? I think it's an important position where you're kind of bridging, your job is kind of liaising between, the department and also the select board and the community. So it's really a position where I think you got to have, and because you're a strong chief, you have to command respect from the people that you are working with. So I don't know if all of the questions all captured a little bit, but can you speak to, examples from your career of what works, what doesn't, about, really earning the respect of everyone, both from the select board and also from the department, and particularly where, you've got a group of people who are, they're in different positions of, experience.
Yeah. So, I think, again, being dedicated, being present and being there, leading by example, showing that having a level of professionalism, how you treat people, how you talk to people. I think what's done it for me, I try to find, usually when I go into a place, I do like a 100-day plan, like to meet with people, find out where their weaknesses are, find ways to bolster them up and make them stronger, and find where their strengths are and capitalize on them and let them, do their job. I don't show up at every scene in Oxford because I know I have competent company officers that can do the job. I know that if they need me, they'll call me, that sort of thing. And I think they respect that. I think that builds respect. I try to make sure I keep the town manager, and in the case of Oxford, I answer directly to the town manager. So she's the conduit to the board. So I make sure that anything that I know she wants to know about, I'm going to make sure she knows. In terms of dealing with the board in that capacity, or even when I was in Munson, where I answered directly to them, again, that professional deference. I would always keep the chairman informed, especially if something that's going to be high profile for the public, so that they're not caught unawares. And I think that, once they see that you're really looking out for their interests, they're looking out for your interests, you kind of gain that trust and respect. In terms of the people who work for me, they're going to be looking to see if I'm really going to take care of their needs. They have a tough job to do. They need the tools to do it. And you've got to be able to get it for them and trust them to be able to do their job. I think, that I believe I've earned that reputation of, staying out of the way when I need to, and then, being that value when I need to be. You're right, Steve Achilles is very well respected. I didn't know him personally, but I did interact and interface with him through chiefs organizations and whatnot, and highly respected. And again, that's why I used his products to benchmark them. And so I think it's critical to keep those kind of things moving in that kind of direction, in that right direction as well, and find ways to improve. I think again, keeping the lines of communication open and working with people, supporting them, getting the things that they need to do their job, listening to their concerns and bringing them back, to the leadership of the town.
Yep, Marguerite.
Is there anything about your job that keeps you awake at night?
It's funny. Usually, right now, as it sits in Oxford, there's no. I know it. I've been sitting back and thinking about that lately, and I sleep pretty well. If it's anything that keeps me awake, it's usually some, every, I think, community has some kind of citizen or some political person who has nefarious motivations. It's not so bad, not necessarily in Oxford, but it's usually those kind of things that you kind of sit and worry about. But these days, lately, I don't. There's nothing that keeps me awake in terms of the competency of the people who work with me's ability to do the job. I have good chief officers, good company officers. If it's anything, is this, did I do enough for them? Do I really, I would be concerned about the number of people we have, but in this sense, it goes back to one of the other questions. We have a great, strong mutual aid partnership in District 7 and around Oxford. So I've got a good rapport with Charlton and Auburn. And we have automatic aid agreements, lesser. So when we have a major working fire, we're all dispatched at the same time. And we don't care who gets there first. There's no ego thing there. I've gone to scenes where one of the chief officers from another town got there first because it's in the north end. He's got command. I'll interface with him, take command sometimes I won't. That sort of thing. So that helps to not keep you awake when you've got the backup coming in from the community. So if you're short-staffed, that they got the backup coming in. I don't really worry about that so much. I just kind of worry about the things that are going to crop up where somebody has an agenda, they're trying to work against your department or undermine its funding. I have had experience with that. Where, somebody's put out an underground newspaper trying to say, well, the fire department's asking for this, and we don't need it, and that sort of thing. Al?
You asked, what we need out of a fire chief, and I think, something I'm working on right now is, if we join a regional dispatch system, we're going to need strong leadership in that system, because what I'm convinced of is its success or failure is really in how you execute on the details. The day you turn that switch on, it better work, and it better work well, better than what you already had. And so that's one thing that I'm very concerned about. There's a lot of benefit to it, but you got to, only if you do it right. There's a lot of opportunity to screw up. So that's one. And then another thing that I'd like to understand a little more is about capital equipment maintenance. We have a power truck that I think we're only going to get 13 years out of, which is no fault of anyone here in this room, but I don't think we made a good decision. And the next chief is going to be involved in whatever piece of equipment we replace it with, and I want to make sure that we have a solid plan for how we take care of it, and that we buy a piece of machinery that we think we're really going to get 15 to 20 out of it rather than 13.
I actually going through that in Oxford. We just my third year in, we spent $150,000 refurbing the town, and hoping to get another 10 years out of it. And it's tough. It's not looking like we're going to be able to get that. It still has its problems. The water pipe leaks, and so I think a lot of that is, in terms of the plan, we have a pretty good capital plan now where we've looked at where the vehicles are. We have our own in-house mechanics in DPW, so we can work with them, and we're trying to now build that so that we're replacing the vehicles at the right time and staggering them out enough so that it's not going to be a negative impact in terms of bonding and paying for them. So usually the way we worked it with finance and everything is if we have something expiring in terms of the bond, we can then look to get something else In terms of in terms of financing. In other aspects too, we've looked at leasing. When I was in Munson, it was in our best interest for ambulances to lease ambulances for, lease purchase, as opposed to try to procure them. But yeah, it's a challenge. I know there's one particular manufacturer that there's a lot of corrosion issues. When you're talking about a tower or a ladder truck, you're talking about a lot of moving parts, and whatnot. So they become costly very quick.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chief McDonald.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Right, likewise. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah,
I really did enjoy hearing everything you said. It was very.
yeah, actually, when you mean, does that make?
It was good.
Thank you.
I'm gonna-
Oh, yes, I'm
You don't want what I
sorry.
got.
Very good. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, nice way down, yes.
Sounds like the problem we had is.
Yeah, I Googled it. This. Something said. Better. Where's that? Is he getting that?
You're getting that.
Okay, all right.
Would like the leasing option, Jason?
So you guys all on duty tonight?
Yes,
Yes.
Did you have a call? That's why you left?
yeah, so I apologize for the motion.
No, I assume it wasn't because of what he was saying.
No, that's exactly, I was leaving like, this is gonna be taken the wrong way, but
It's all under.
we have all our phones shut off, so you won't hear when a call comes in, but trust me, we'll only be leaving because of calls.
All right, so could have waited, yeah. But have a seat. Hello, everyone.
Hi, afternoon, evening, yes.
One member still to come back. Yep.
You go by Andrew or Andrew?
Yeah.
Andrew?
Any insight on who the Patriots? are looking at?
Would be the last to know.
Well, I feel like trade pick, right?
Well, they might, but they've got to get somebody at some point.
Inside track the Foxborough.
No, not in that realm, no.
Who's happy?
He's gone. He's still there too?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think he's going.
All right, I'll be ready. Okay. So, Captain Puccini. Welcome. The format is we've had about roughly an hour for each of the 3 finalists. And we're going to ask you a series of 15 questions. So it's designed so that each of the 5 of us can ask 3 questions. We'll just go kind of around. And to keep everyone kind of roughly on the same amount of time, the math is if we try to aim for like 4 minutes for each, question and answer module, we stay on it. Now, for both of them, we have completed it like within the hour, and then we're just opening up to whatever questions the rest of the board. So that's kind of generally the so I'll start. Please tell us about your fire service career, why you first entered the field, why you're interested in this position, and why you believe you'd be successful here in South. And if you can also speak to that last part about, why Southborough as opposed to other places where you can go and advance your career.
Well, first, I appreciate everybody having me here tonight. It's been a great process, and I'm honored just to be sitting here in front of you. My name is Andrew Quintini. I'm a 3rd generation Ashland, Massachusetts resident. I got interested in the fire service. My grandfather was a career captain of the Ashland Fire Department, retired in 1978, and he just passed a few years ago. So he beat the pension system. So that, that kind of started my interest in the fire service when in high school. Ashland had a junior firefighter program, the Explorer Post. I started with them when at the age of 16 or 17. I got my EMT basic while I was still in high school, and then proceeded to paramedic school right out of high school. Due to the economic climate in the time, Ashland just wasn't hiring. I found myself in Foxborough. I got hired in Foxborough 2006. I moved my way through the ranks. I achieved my first supervisory position in 2011 as an acting officer, then a promoted lieutenant in 2015, captain in 2019. It's been a great organization to work for. It's been a really rewarding career. We've had a lot of accomplishments, especially in the last recent years with our CIPSE accreditation and ISO 1 classification. So those were pretty big feathers in our cap that we're all very proud of, and I was fortunate enough to be part of. Why Southborough? I love Foxborough, but this area is my roots. So I grew up in Ashland. My family's in Ashland. I'm a frequent visitor of Southborough itself. I think my daughter's a mascot of Marlowe's Cafe downtown. Usually find us there once or twice a week. So when I saw this opportunity pop up, I just thought it was a great opportunity to apply for. Like I said, just my roots are in this area, back in the Ashland Southborough area. Why the South Fire Department specifically? I look at from the outside looking into the organization. It's always seemed to be a very well-run department, great equipment, great facilities. The few of the individuals that I've met throughout the years have always been very respectful and very professional. So they seem to be a very proud group, and I'd be fortunate to be part of it. Thank you.
So, Captain, describe your current leadership style and how you would interact with members of the Southborough Fire Department if you were to be appointed chief. And by the way, a lot of these questions are compound questions. Okay, so feel free to say, can you repeat? So describe it first. Then, as a leader, specifically illustrate how you make sure everyone in the organization knows what is expected of them, and try to give us specific examples about it.
Can you repeat the first part of the question? Sorry.
As I said, I hate it when people. Okay, so let's do it one at a time. Describe your current leadership style and how you would interact with members of the Southborough Fire Department if you were to be appointed chief.
My leadership style is lead from the front. So I would never expect anybody that works around me, whether peer or subordinate, whatever it is, to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. So I like to lead from the front, take the bull by the horns, and really lead the charge, whether it's operational emergency incident or administrative around the state. It's proven me well in the past for both operational emergency scenes and just general station activities. Expectations for the department. We transitioned to a very strong policy-based organization, and it's made it very clear for all members, myself as a supervisor and anybody at the department itself, what's expected of them. Policies aren't designed to trip anybody up. They're designed to guide people into making the right decisions, and to know what's the organization, what the town expects of each individual. So with coming into Southborough, I would review those types of policies that probably already exist and try to expand on them, and bring in my experiences. It's to be a leader of the department is just that, a leader. It's not. It wouldn't be. You need the support from everybody in the organization to really be successful and move forward. So having the collaboration of the entire organization to come up with common vision and future for the organization will only make us grow.
So now, how many firemen do you supervise right now as a captain?
Currently, my shift is the first shift to go to 9. So there's 9. So I a lieutenant and 1 lieutenant, and then 7 firefighters.
Okay, so this is the second part of the question. As the new leader here, specifically tell us how you would make sure everyone here would know what's expected of them based on what you want.
Again, I think to go back to setting policies and setting examples, again, leading from the front, making sure there's clear direction for everybody, whether it's operational or again administrative. Nothing should be a secret. Everything should be transparent in the operation of the organization. And by leading with transparency and providing clear documentation that's easily accessible. We live in the world of electronics and application-based systems, and making sure all those systems are in place to make sure the members have the tools to succeed.
Another two-parter, sorry. One is, how do you create an atmosphere of respect and cooperation within the department? Second part is, what's your strategy for managing interdepartmental conflicts? But first, how do you create respect and cooperation?
Respect is mutual. Respect needs to go up and down. And I think, again, leading from the front and showing respect to every member of the department, from a brand new entry-level employee to a senior firefighter, goes a long way. And if they see that the chief of department is respecting all of the members and all of their opinions and past experiences, that's going to reflect through the department and hopefully become contagious.
Interdepartmental conflict, we've been situations where there have been conflicts with other areas of the town, for example, like the police or other departments in town. How do you deal with that?
The biggest thing is open lines of communication, especially with other departments in Southborough, whether police, DPW, schools, whatever it may be. Just having those open dialogues, meeting other supervisors, meeting other department heads, and trying to get in that first name basis with those individuals. So you try to nip those problems in the bud. You don't want them to grow to be a point where it might be very difficult to manage. Everybody wants to do the right thing for the most part. So just collaborating and making sure it's clear lines of communication, I think, will go a long way.
Thank you.
A major challenge is most fire employee recruitment and retention. What experience do you have with this, and what ideas would you bring to confront this issue or solve this issue here? And this is a three-part question. Do you want me to stop there, or would you
If you'd like, yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Okay.
Okay.
Recruitment and retention has been a challenge, and not even just the fire service, the public service, I believe throughout the country. It's tough to try to convince people to want to go into public service, whether it's emergency response or any other level. My wife works in the schools, so they see the same struggles themselves. One thing that was very successful in Foxborough is we also instituted the Fire Explorer program. In 15 years, I believe we have 15 career hires out of that program, most of them in Foxborough, others throughout the state as well. So that allowed us into the schools. We're already in the schools of public education anyways, but it gave us just another arm into the schools to reach the youth and to help maybe pique their interest and guide them into a career of service for others. So it's proven very successful.
Schools here meaning high schools?
High schools, yeah. College can be tough to try to target. The high schools are in our, I understand Southborough is a regional high school, but it's part of the town of Southborough. So that's an easy way for us to get in. I'll reflect on my own experience when I graduated high school. When I said I wanted to go to paramedic school, it wasn't well received by the guidance department. I really stand my ground and say that no, I'm not going to go to a 4-year school right away. I want to go to paramedic school. This is what I want to do. It served me well, but I had the support and guidance from the fire department, where that was the career I knew I wanted to do, to help lead me in the right direction. And I'm very glad all the direction I took. So by getting into the schools and helping guide the youth and also educate the school that the public service is a very rewarding career, can be a very successful career. So to show that, maybe not going to a 4-year school and going straight to paramedic school might not be a bad choice for some individuals.
And the third part of this question is, which I think you just answered, which is beyond traditional advertising portals, what creative ideas do you have for outreach? Again,
A junior post, getting into the schools, whether, job fairs in the area, it's being visible in the community. One major aspect is training. Everybody other candidates looking into this organization are going to look to see what type of training that their fire department is doing. Do they want to be part of that? Is is it exciting training? Is it meaningful? Is it challenging? Those are all attributes that not only would make our organization stronger and better, but it'll also help attract other candidates.
So the Southborough Fire Department is getting newer firefighters with less experience that need mentoring. How do you develop a culture for the department that acknowledges this without excluding your more experienced members?
Again, I think we'll go back to meaningful training. The experience, we've had a lot of experience retire in the last few years, and that's every organization. And we see a huge influx of new firefighters. I look at the shift that I have. My senior firefighter is 18 years, and then I think it drops down to about 10. It is quite the drop, but we've made up that gap with aggressive training and setting clear policy in roles throughout the organization. For future succession planning, be another aspect of that is we have to prepare new entry firefighters for future leadership positions. It's nothing that should be kept in a bubble or in the dark. That stuff needs to be up front right out of the gate when somebody walks into the organization to show that these are the different career paths you take. Self-provided about it. If this is your end goal, these are the steps that you should take to get there. And again, making actions like that is only going to strengthen the organization.
Could you please describe your current fire department in terms of services, staffing, organization, and specialized characteristics? And based on your research of the Southborough department, what are the similarities and what are some of the differences? And then one of the things I'd be particularly interested in Foxborough. You get that whole Route 1 corridor, including a huge sports stadium.
Correct.
What's your department's role in, responding to incidents there?
The Foxborough Fire Department runs 4 shifts, just like Southborough. We have 2 shifts of 9, 2 shifts of 8 firefighters. The goal is to be 10 firefighters per shift, operate out of 1 station, just like here in Foxborough as well. In Southborough as well. We are pretty busy. We last year we were just shy of 4,300 runs with. We just went to 9, so 4,300 runs with 8 firefighters is hopping. So we run 3 ambulances. They're pretty steady, and guys are running. So it's a great culture. A lot of the members that come in know that we're busy. They want to be part of that. Route 1 is an interesting place in Foxborough. Everybody knows Gillette Stadium, the craft organization. Everything he's built up there has been top notch. It's been absolutely fantastic. But there are challenges associated with that. Brigham and Women's alone is a huge call volume for us. We're probably doing 300 or 400 incidents a year up there, just from one medical facility moving in, which that could happen to any community. With Route 9 going through Southborough, having urgent care develop in that area would not be surprising, and it would be a challenge for the department. So seeing those possible, I don't want to call them threats, they're opportunities. Seeing those opportunities come into the community, and how do we harness them? How do we wrap our arms around them, and really try to make sure that the community and the department benefit from it. The stadium, I know you have pilot programs here in Southborough. The stadium is also on a pilot program. So it's one of the lesser known facts of Gillette. The stadium itself is in a pilot program completely based on ticket sales. So it's not quite the tax revenue that would be otherwise just for straight up commercial property values. So there are challenges associated around it. We have a strong detail presence during events itself. For a football game, I believe we have 32 firefighters staff with a private EMS. So that aspect, although my role on shift as a captain, I mainly supervise 8 others at the stadium. I usually find myself in a position where I'm supervising dozens, multiple first aid rooms, mobile assets out in the parking lots, and organizations such as private EMS and bringing in women's doctors and nurses.
Kathy?
It's all very interesting. I know as far as where it goes. How many Christmas do we have a year?
I mean, what?
He's got 4,300. How many do we have in Southborough?
Right about 1,800.
Okay, so I get the best question because of where you are. We have been considering, joining a regional emergency communications center for a couple of years. Everyone here has actually been down to see the one in Margaret, that one in Parksboro. So were you there when the transition took place?
I was.
Okay, so we haven't made a decision yet. We've done a lot of work. We are heading toward trying to make a decision. We got pros and cons. We've got a lot of pushback from people who are probably in this room right now, in our local dispatchers. How would you help the select board and support the select board in the decision they ultimately make?
So I was fortunate to be part of, very involved in the regional dispatch transition in Foxborough. Originally, we were set up very similar to here. We had a communications center in the public safety building that did police and fire. There was a challenge with staffing and operations. So we found that the regional approach was the best. I'm a strong believer of the regional dispatch system. From my experience and how we're running it in Foxborough, it's really professionalized service. So I think to the public, if that's a decision, if that's a direction the board would like to go, I think it's education. I think it's education of the public to show that services aren't going to be decreased; they're going to be increased. It's going to be there's the potential for more staffing, better technology. It's its own profession with its own hierarchy and also potential for advanced internal advancement, which is just going to bring in more qualified candidates. People that go into SEMREC, it's typically not a stepping stone position that's what we're facing in Foxborough. A lot of people were using the dispatch center as a stepping stone to be on the police fire department. So you get a dispatcher, you train them, they become very good at their jobs. So now with the regional center, it's its own hierarchy and it's its own profession that people can get promoted within. So it's turned out to be a great system.
All right, so do you think the key then, if the select board were to believe this is the better route to go, we're either going to do that or we're going to add more people here. That's our two choices, right? We believe that there needs to be more of a robust dispatch operation, one way or the other. So if we were to decide it is a regional approach, your role in this would be to help us educate the public as far as what the benefits of the regional center versus the local dispatch center. That's the key to it.
I think so, and I talked about transparency already. I think it's being transparent in the technologies that a regional center could bring into Southborough. It's there's some pretty powerful systems out there that they train on. They train on as aggressively in their systems as we do in our systems in the fire department. It just makes it pretty powerful. So being transparent in showing the benefits of the possible system, I think would be great. Should the towns decide to hire more and stay with the current position you have, it can also be a great system. I think just then the townspeople and the board would have to decide. There'd be an investment there, there'd be a monetary investment, and even if you're able to throw the appropriate funding at it, are you going to be able to staff it? You're going to find the right individuals. So it's a very multi-angled approach. There's no one clear answer. There's no one clear problem. Everything has its pros and cons. I guess it's just weighing.
And you feel like you know the pros and cons of each very well, so it can help.
I do, yeah. We live both. When I first started, we dispatch ourselves. We moved to central dispatch with civilian dispatchers out of one building, and like I said, I entered for the transition. So I've been fortunate enough to be part of 3 different dispatch systems, all vastly different.
Thank you.
You've already answered my question pretty much. But as for the issue for us is that Southborough is a reasonably complex environment where we've got some major roadways going through town. for significant educational institutions. And the question is, how do you deal with the large public safety incidents? And I think the Foxborough experience, those kind of things. So you seem to be fairly experienced in terms of those issues and a major accident, like 495 or 9 or whatever, that creating issue where multiple departments are involved.
Right, yeah, we respond regularly to 95 and 495 as well. So just like you guys have 495 and the Mass Pike. So very similar. We respond with our other area fire departments and automatic full response. Highways and limited access is there's the serious potential for injury and loss of life out of an interstate that a lot of people don't realize. Tragic things happen out of the interstate that residents of South Road might not even realize. As we experience in Boxford, we could have an almost a mass casualty incident out on the interstate, and the town doesn't really realize that. So I think it's education, it's showing the hazards that can run a community like this.
This is a money question. What involvement have you had in budget creation and budget management? And part two, what do you consider the most challenging part of budget?
My experience with budget creation and management probably revolve around a lot of the grant awards that we've had. I've been fortunate enough to be the author for probably 4 or 5 successful federal grants, ranging from, I think the smallest one was $32,000 for thermal imaging cameras up to $1 million for a lab truck. So I was fortunate enough to build those budgets and make sure I fall within them. Also, we did apply and were awarded the safer staffing grant for 4 firefighters, and that's a more complex budget to build out of calculating. For us, it was 4 individuals across 3 years, salary and benefits. So I've been fortunate to work with our chief very closely into the insights of the budget. I try to expose myself as much as I can. I watch select board meetings. I've been watching your meetings since I saw this opportunity. So
sorry.
No, please. So so I try to really entrench myself in the process. You guys just had your town meeting. There's usually a lot of excitement leading up to that with advisory boards and whatnot. So trying to stay on top of that, I feel like it's giving me the competitive edge. Challenges with the budget, it's the unforeseen expenses. So I'll use the example to go back to the interstate. Last summer, our ladder truck was rear-ended by an intoxicated driver on the highway. It caused about $70,000 worth of damage to a relatively new truck. And we have some hazards in town, like any town does. We didn't want to be without a ladder truck for that long. So we were able to get creative in our budget, and we were able to secure a purchase of a used tower truck that sits as a reserve today. So it was a great exercise to see how we could be creative with the budget and still meet the needs of the community.
Well, you've kind of answered this one already, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you have experience writing and obtaining grants? What resources have you been able to apply in this area through grant funding? But I think you've already answered that, which tell us how you've been able to both execute on the grant and the project and manage successfully.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to be really given the lead on any grant writing and acquisition in the department since 2015. The first grant we received was about $150,000 for portable radios to get a regional grant with Mansfield, Mass for extrication tools being in firefighting homes. The ladder truck was it was actually $850,000 for the ladder truck that we were awarded in 2018. And more recently, there's a lot of state opportunities, whether it's through emergency management or the state, the Department of Fire Service also has a few funding opportunities. Currently, we just were awarded $19,000 to outfit all of our firefighters with ballistic vests. So that's the most common project.
Okay, can you please describe some experiences you've had in successfully working together with other departments in your municipality, and in particular with your town's police department?
With the police department, so just last year, we did some active shooter threat drills. It was a great exercise. We've done a few of them over the years. But more recently, I was able to work closely with the police lieutenant in charge of that division and try to develop a training program that was that complemented both organizations. So to make sure we're on both on the same page. Other departments that we work closely with is Council on Aging and the Senior Center. Foxborough was fortunate enough to have one of our deputy chiefs is also a nurse, and he functions as a town nurse. So we have a component of the public health department in the fire station, which we were actually able to secure that right before COVID, which was a miracle. So it really worked out well. But having that relationship with the Council on Aging and the Senior Center, where they have access to our databases. So as they have at-risk individuals in town, they're actually able to update our databases directly. So if we respond to an emergency incident, the information is there for us to see. So just having that open line of communication across all departments, not necessarily the police department. Like I said, there's plenty of other departments in town that will be just as much value to make sure we get it.
Thank you.
Can you give us an example where on your own volition you've taken steps to improve your leadership ability?
I'm a firm believer of education. I try to take advantage of as much offerings as possible. I completed my chief fire officer credentialing through the Mass Fire Academy. That was in 2018. More recently, I was selected by our former town manager, Bill Keegan, to attend a training class in Cambridge. It was an 8-day program, the public sector consortium. I'm probably saying it wrong. And I was able to it was a leadership class, and it wasn't focused around public safety. So it was definitely it was very eye-opening to learn about public leadership in a non-public safety setting with peers from town. So I was there with a few other department heads, and like I said, it was an 8-day program. We learned a lot from meeting facilitation to conflict management to systems mapping, trying to find leverage points for problems. So it was really a good experience. So to try to better answer your question, I'm always trying to look around to see what educational opportunities are out there and to take advantage of everything I can find.
How would you describe your vision of your working relationship with the town administrator and the select board, and how do you expect to make that happen?
Again, transparency, having common goals. Should I be fortunate to be awarded the position, I'd be interested in hearing what are your visions for the self-profile department and how can we collectively make that happen. Being upfront through our making sure the department website's updated. You guys are already involved. The fire department's already involved in the accreditation process. I'd be very interested in continuing that through because that just it really shows the public what the organization is about, exactly how we operate. So I think it's finding the common goals and to see, like I said, see what you guys would want out of the department and how I could try to make that happen.
Thank you.
Okay, this is I'm sorry to have to ask you this question. Describe a situation that you would handle differently now if you had to do it over. In other words, where did you mess up?
So we have some challenging personnel issues over the past couple of years that we thought we handled in the moment. The end outcome was exactly what it needed to be, but in looking back through 2020 vision, there were a lot of signs before the actual incident that made us act. We thought we were recognizing them, but with that 2020 vision, we realized we probably should. We might have been able to be a little bit swifter in some of our decision making processes. Ultimately, the organization came through well, and you know, we did what we had to do. So, it was eye opening. So you know, I guess to try to answer your question a little bit better is it's those personnel challenges. It's not necessarily an emergency operation. It's those personnel challenges that every organization in that group faces. So it's how do you handle those? They're always tough because the fire service is such a tight family. You know, it's really hard to hand out discipline or something somebody doesn't want to hear to essentially somebody's part of your family. But unfortunately, sometimes it has to be done. And that's the job.
Thank you.
So we're interested in finding out a little bit about your sense of self and why you think you'd be the best choice for Southborough. And also tell us something that you can share that we wouldn't read on your resume.
Why I'd be the best for Southborough? Like I said, my roots are in the area. I'm not a town resident, but I couldn't possibly be any closer. I think about 100 yards over the town line. So, you know, I think having already an idea of how the community is and how it operates, you know, gives me an advantage. I'm sorry, the second part of your question?
Tell us something about you that isn't on your resume.
I mean, personal life wise, I enjoy the Cape. You know, me and my father share a boat. We have it on mooring at Mashpee. So that's usually our enjoyment over the summer. You know, I'm very family orientated. My parents only live about half a mile away from me. We talk every day. Usually see each other every day unless I'm moving fire station. So you know, family's a big part of my life. And, you know, I feel like I extend that into how I operate, how I feel in the fire station as well.
All right, well, we still have time for some follow-up questions. I'll just begin with one. Can you talk about an example of where you have had to execute a decision or a policy, but you might not completely agree with it, right? Where you're in a position where you get kind of attention of, I don't really agree with it, but it's really in the best interest of the organization to try to get everyone on the same page. Have you experienced that dynamic before?
Yes, and a lot of it, you know, is if you get into the policy that's not going to be popular, you know, to try to ease the pain, try to supply as much facts and figures as well. Try to make it a factual decision, not necessarily just an opinion. So, you know, I feel like that way the membership could do their own research and see the advantages of why the organization might have to go this direction. You know, an example, I was in agreement on this, but it was a difficult policy to put forth. Is I worked with the chief and we try to streamline our apparatus response. So go back to regional dispatch. Our new the regional dispatch center does emergency medical dispatch, and they rank every incident in its acuity, from alpha being a low acuity call to an echo being a very high acuity call. So we started to base all of our response on that. So the unpopular decision was we send an ambulance by itself without a fire truck to alpha level calls. It didn't go over well, but it's been a couple of years now, and now that's just kind of the way of life, and nobody remembers the old way of doing it. So I think, you know, we supplied as many facts as we possibly can, as we possibly could. We're not the first organization to be doing that. There's very large emergency services throughout the country that are already employing that technology and that methodology of response. So I think being transparent and showing that, hey, we're not reinventing the wheel here, we're just bringing something new into the organization that helped ease it.
I've got one. So you're going to be making quite a leap if you were to be appointed chief, from captain to chief. The other two applicants, one's a chief, one's a deputy chief. You're in a union right now, so you're used to sitting on that side of the table. You'll be on the other side, somewhat, if you were to be chief. So how do you think you're going to be able to handle any potential conflicts within the union ranks, given that you're used to being on that side and now you're going to have to be in a different chair as far as trying to deal with that. So are you comfortable that you'll be able to make that transition?
Yeah, I'm comfortable I'd be able to make that transition. There's also an added benefit that I'm currently on that other side of the table where I know how it works. I'm fresh out of the system and I know how both sides work. And I know that collaboration and coming to an agreement together, administration and the union is usually the best approach. The way I've always approached any of my leadership styles is, if I have to decide to be your boss or your friend, I'm going to be your boss. That's my job. If you want to be my friend afterwards, I would love your friendship. And those that don't, they probably weren't that great of friends to begin with. So, if I live by that methodology, I understand, especially as chief of department, I have to do my job first and make sure I'm making the best decisions for the town. And those potential disagreements with the labor force, they're inevitable. It's going to happen, but being collaborative and being transparent, I think will get us through it the easiest.
What questions do you have for us?
No, I really don't have any questions. I thought of this walking in, for the past couple hours, like, if they asked me what questions I have, what would I have? And it was really hard to come up with this. Process has been great. It's been very transparent. It's been very well run. And I really try to immerse myself into the town of Southborough and the Southborough Fire Department over the past couple of months, reading your town report, the fire department standard cover. I really try to dive into it. So
Probably more than most of us.
Same like you were looking like, I had one other question too. When you talked about the budgeting experience, you focused on the grants. One of the real challenges for the fire chief here is to advocate for the fire department budget through our normal budget process with things like the financial advisory committee, working with our town administrator, select board, and getting budget that town meeting will support, which sometimes is easy and sometimes is a real challenge.
Right.
So what kind of experiences we've had with the budgeting at the town levels?
The town level, unfortunately, fairly limited. But like I said, I really try to immerse myself in it. I ask a lot of questions. I talk to our chief officer. I talk to previous finance directors. Did really just try to understand the process from every angle that I possibly can. Most fire department or any town budgets, it's mainly the expenses, mainly personnel. I know us in Foxborough, I believe we're 93% personnel. And I believe you guys in Southborough are just about the same. So, those are a little bit easier expenses to map out. The collective bargaining agreement, it clearly states what salary will be. And, it's a little bit easier to project that out. It's those unforeseen circumstances. Unexpected apparatus repairs, major building repairs.
And capital, particularly as well.
Right.
Town, traffic.
Right.
Coming here, which is interesting process.
Yeah, I'm sure. So for the capital projects, I have been part of those in setting replacement cycles. So that way it's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise that I would have to come to the board and ask for a $2 million ladder truck. Hopefully that's projected over years. So that way you can kind of see it. Same with pumpers and ambulances, staff cars, whatever it may be. Everything has a usable limit in time. So having staggered replacements for any of our capital, so that way, like I said, they can be projected. Don't sneak up on us.
Marguerite?
One tiny one. This is, do you foresee or do you have any sense of new technology that's going to come along and affect firefighting, such as AI or into your grids or better data-driven information for making decisions?
Yeah, it's definitely happening. So we're one of the things we saw with AI already. You might have seen this in the news that we have AI ultrasound in the ambulance in Foxborough. It's something that it's something that we're pretty proud of. We're able to write for a special waiver project with the state to bring ultrasound into the truck to look for internal bleeding to help us make transport decisions. But with that, we just got a new device. It's AI based, so it's just a great, powerful tool. You know, and to go, like I said, to go back to dispatch, you know, how's AI going to improve the future of emergency communications? It's you know, I haven't seen anything specifically yet, but it's absolutely going to happen. But a lot of our systems are app based, so it's really making sure that we fully utilize the systems that we already have to their fullest capacity to make, you know, make sure we provide the service.
So one of the other things we've been talking about tonight is the fact that Southborough doesn't have a deputy chief position. That's another thing that we've been talking about over the last couple of years. And Chief Achilles was in favor of. Really, when he started out, as a long-term thing, we should create a deputy chief position that helps for succession planning. We just, in part because of budget reasons, was having done. I mean, what is your thought on whether Southborough should do this?
Looking from this experience alone, it's something the town should really strongly consider. You know, something I think I would be in support of, not only for succession planning, but you know, you look at the Chief Achilles' departure, it left a void in the organization. You know, having a budget of nearly $3 million, essentially running a $3 million business, and not have a designated number two is a challenge. So you know, forget somebody retiring or taking other employment. What if there was injury or illness? You know, the department needs to be able to carry on without the town having to potentially scramble to look for a replacement. So it's something the town probably should strongly consider. And like I said, it also brings into that succession planning. So that way, you know, hopefully that deputy chief position could be prepared and be ready to step into the future chief role.
Isn't there more to it than just the step into the void? So there's no void, you got the two there.
Mhm.
Isn't there also the ability to share duties and jobs in a way that makes more sense than just having the chief do everything?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So it's finding that niche that a deputy chief can fall into. You know, one is EMS. So EMS is 60 to 70% of our business. So, you know, should that be a chief officer, executive officer position? A lot of communities will say yes. Because it's such an important aspect of our business. You know, why wouldn't you want an executive officer in there? So there's a lot of different avenues a position like a deputy chief could go into. But you know, I think we'd have to look at what our core missions are, what our core goals are, and you know, also try to pick the best candidate to fill that spot.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, Captain, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And appreciate your time with us this evening.
Great, I really appreciate the opportunity, and
Thanks.
yeah, look forward to seeing you in the future.
Very good job.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
See you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a terrible cold.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Stay away.
All right. Well, this is a little anticlimactic because we're not gonna be making decisions tonight. We're gonna make a decision. Our meeting on Monday morning. With that. The next thing we have, I'll let everyone leave because we got an executive session. We're gonna do.
Great night.
Have a great night, yeah.
You're looking at that.
Really, you look like a kid.
You want to just go into executive session? It's gonna take us a minute to shut everything down.
Yes, I move the board enter into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, and not return to open session to discuss contract negotiations for the fire union exemption 2, as the chair has determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's position.
Second.
Roll call vote, Bennington, aye.
Okay.
Stay with I.
Randy, I.
Hamilton, I. We just get a button where we